Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the title of this speech is The Mechanism of Reincarnation, which presupposes acceptance of the fact that there is reincarnation. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing whether or not reincarnation is a fact. For the last 2,000 years in the Western world, it had the fact of reincarnation has been largely suppressed. And according to the materialistic outlook, reincarnation does not take place. According to the materialistic outlook, well, materialism means that there is only matter. There's no soul, there's no spirit. We only can accept as real that which we can perceive with our senses, which we can touch, taste, smell, feel, hear, and based on that, what we can extrapolate with our minds. This is known as the scientific outlook. And generally when we speak of reincarnation or any spiritual dimension, the materialist will say, prove it. And he sets the materialists have also set the parameters for what they consider to be acceptable proof. Well, there was one scientist who died about 2 years ago called Dr. Ian Stevenson. Ian, not E-N. Ian. Ian is a Scottish or English name. So he spent his whole life documenting cases of what appeared to be reincarnation in using methodology which would be considered in any field scientific. Cases of mostly children remembering their previous life. And he investigated many cases with the required skepticism of a scientist. And he found literally thousands of cases in which even applying skepticism, the best explanation for these children's remembering what appeared to be a previous life was that they actually were remembering a previous life. So actually there is scientific evidence for those who put importance on scientific evidence. There is scientific evidence for the phenomenon known as reincarnation. Of course it doesn't fit with the dogma of what is called science, and therefore you don't hear about it. It's not considered scientific because so-called scientists don't want to believe in it. But there are cultures within this world that are based on acceptance of the phenomenon of reincarnation. And just as many people who are raised in cultures which do not foster that acceptance consider it to be something fantastic, persons who are raised in such cultures take it to be an accepted fact. Now, that the scientific method has been applied to verify the phenomenon of reincarnation that's not the methodology which is accepted within these traditional cultures. Actually, the culture which has got the clearest knowledge of reincarnation is that which is called the Vedic culture, of which the Vedic culture means which is based on the Vedas, which the Vedas are sometimes called Hindu scriptures, which is a term applied by necessarily from the Western perspective, because they don't have terms or sufficient knowledge to understand actually what the Vedas are. The term Hindu is a modern term. It means it's about, how long? About 800 years old? No, more than that. About up to 1300 years old when the Muslims started. Maybe about 1,000 years. About 1,000 years old. Which is modern in terms of great time. So that term is not found in the Vedas, and the term scripture gives the idea of a sectarian dogmatic tract that people you just have to believe it without any particular reason, except that if you don't believe it, you're told you go to hell forever. But the term Veda itself means knowledge. Veda means knowledge of everything. Now, when we say knowledge, that's not something dogmatic. Here in France, I presume that the children in school are taught that 1 + 1 = 2, probably in French language, but anyway, the same thing. It's not French knowledge. Or if the teacher is a Christian, you can't say it's Christian knowledge. Or if the teacher is an atheist, you can't say it's atheistic knowledge. Knowledge is by its very essence distinguished from opinion. So the Vedas are knowledge of everything. Now you may say, well, in the Vedas, is there knowledge that France is a country? Is there knowledge that there was a person called Napoleon who was prominent in French history? More than one. But so, no, that's not there in the Vedas. But the Vedas give the principles of all that exists. So in discussing the mechanism of reincarnation, I'm going to be referring to the Vedic tracts. Even the Vedas, you can't really say it's books, because knowledge may be written in books, but the knowledge itself is not the book. The knowledge is independent of the book. Now, the essence of the Vedas is the Bhagavad Gita. And that's, again, it's sometimes called the Hindu Bible, but it's a very misleading term to say so. It is giving knowledge and giving understanding, comprehension. It's quite distinguished from some scripture in which it said, believe this or burn. And the mood is not believe or burn, it's try to understand, try to understand, try to understand. Now, the first point that Krishna is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, and the first point that he makes is that these bodies are temporary. The soul is eternal, the soul is the person, the body is temporary. How this reincarnation takes place, how it can be understood, that is described by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. I'll speak some of the verses in the Sanskrit language in which they were originally spoken. That helps to establish that I'm not speaking some opinion of my own. And also every time that anyone speaks that, we can by hearing the language in which it's spoken, that helps us to understand the depth and the nuances. So, in describing this process of reincarnation, Krishna says, Utkramantam sthitang vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. This is one verse of Bhagavad Gita. There are 700 verses. It's not many, but it encapsulates all the knowledge that we really need to know. So in this verse, Krishna says, he refers to how we give up one body, we give up it's literally one situation. We give up one situation. Yeah. Because if we, actually every word has so much depth, because it's not just the body that we change, but with each body comes a whole situation. So this is described in more detail in other parts of the Vedic literature. Just before that, Shrotam Chakshu Sparshanam Cha Rasanam Granam Eva Cha Adhishtaya Manas Chayam Vishayanu Pasevate. That in each situation we have different way, which in each body we have a different way of touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, hearing. The touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, hearing of a dog is different to that of a human. The touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, and hearing of each living being is different to that of every other living being. It's unique. But it's all based around the mind. And then here we get into Vedic psychology. So in the Vedic psychology is quite different from the what we may call modern psychology. It's quite amazing that in modern psychology although it's the study of the mind, there's no real understanding of what the mind is. And the mind works on the template of consciousness. And consciousness is the intrinsic, inseparable feature, characteristic of the soul. That is the difference between spirit and matter. According to materialistic understanding, consciousness is a product of various specific combinations of matter. But the Vedic understanding is that matter which appears to be alive is never alive. This body is alive, touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, hearing. But no, it's not actually alive. The chemicals are not the life. In this body there is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, many chemicals, but that is not life. The life is due to the presence of the soul. Sometimes a child is born dead, which is a kind of oxymoronic statement. Now the child that is stillborn, that's a kind of euphemistic English way of saying that, child that is stillborn has the body of a stillborn child has the same chemical composition of that which is born alive, or who is born alive. No, it's which is born alive, because it's a body, we're talking about the body. But the body that is born dead doesn't grow. Why? Because the soul left the body during the process of birth. Someone dies. We're not thinking about babies. Maybe an old man. I have to say old man or woman in the modern age because women die as well as men. They have the same right as men to die. Equal rights. Égalité. Okay, so an old woman has died. We'll be viva les mademoiselles. All that kind of thing. So, but viva, but no, it's not viva. They'll died. Damn, that's it. Damn the dams. So, now, up to the time that body died, you're trying to keep it alive. And someone may say, oh, my mother, or someone else says, oh, my wife. As long as that body is alive, it's a crime to kill it. But as soon as the body is dead, it's a crime to not bury it or burn it. You can keep it in cold storage for a little time in the mortuary, but you have to bury it or burn it, depending on whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant or an atheist. Now, what if you took the body that's still alive and put it in a coffin and send it off to the mortuary? That would be considered bizarre and gruesome. But it's the same chemicals before death and after death. So what happened that makes a difference? That before you're talking to my mother or my wife, and then that person who you thought you loved, you're going to burn that body or bury it. What is the difference between a living body and a dead body? Now, there are many universities all over the world and many intelligent people. France is famous for having so many great philosophers. But this question, they're not even asking, what is the difference between a living body and a dead body? They may say, well, in the dead body, the respiratory system stops, the circulatory system stops, the brain waves stop. But what is the intrinsic difference? What causes that? In every language of the world, when someone dies, people say, he has gone away, or she has gone away. How do you say that in French? Il est parti. You say it, right? When someone's died? Yeah, I know. I don't know actually whether or not you say it in French, but I know that you do, because in every language, that's what you say. Other languages, we have a collection of various language speakers here. In Hindi, chale gaya. Bengali, chale gete. Ruski, pakino, kite. Tamil, poi beta. Something like that. Gone away. In every language, right? Any other languages here? For more example. Portuguese. Moreo. Portuguese. So, Sindhi mein kya bolte? Mari veo. It's gone away. Chaliya. Konsi bhasha? Marathi. Gujarati ma. So, in every language, we find that people, when someone dies, they say, gone away. In every language of the world. That means that people, they have an understanding, what's that called? Intuition, that the person is not the body. They've gone somewhere else. It's not just simply a euphemism. But then someone says, it's not gone, it's still there, it's still there. The body is there, it's still there. But no, it's gone away. Who has gone away? What has gone away? All your life you was thinking, this is my mother, and now gone away, but it's the same body. That means you never knew who your mother actually was. And we don't understand who we are, because we think, this is me. But I am not hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and trace elements, and some styrofoam from the junk food, McDonald's food. Maybe they'll make Maybe they'll make you a bionic styrofoam man. There's this idea that you can download all your brainwaves into a computer. Then you can continue to exist in a computer program. Just hope no one comes along and hits the delete button. So, getting back to that Gita verse, Utkramantang Sitang Vapi, I got as far as the word stita. This is our situation. We think that I am this body, this is my wife, this is my dog, I am French. But actually this is a false identity. So to all the proud French people, Russian people, British people, whatever maybe, we can say, you are not French. How do you say that? Je suis français. I'm a soul. Okay. So I am French. You see, there's my passport. You see, French. Number 970165342. I'm genuinely French. Born in France with French genes. Not this kind of genes, but DNA, all that kind of stuff. And there is my date of birth, 1970. So, my dear Frenchman, or woman, where were you in 1969? I didn't exist, they will say. And where will you be in the year 2069? Yeah, might still be alive. What about 2169? You'll be in a computer program, in a bionic body. Unlikely. So, Udkramantang Stitang Vapi Bunjan. Why are we in this situation? This is all described in great detail in Bhagavad Gita. It's both concise and in detail, which might seem contradictory. But the point is that in each word there is so much depth of understanding. As I said, the Bhagavad Gita, it is the essence of all the Vedas. So whatever is in Bhagavad Gita in concise form is explained in great detail elsewhere within the Vedic literature. So, Bhunjanam Vagunan Vitam. We are in this world trying to enjoy it. So our touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, hearing goes on vishayanupasevate. We're trying to enjoy the objects of this world via the medium of the mind, based on the false conception of myself being the body. So the mind has, of course, unlimited multifunctions, complex functions. But the two basic functions of the mind are sankalpa vikalpa, acceptance and rejection. Everything we see, touch, smell, feel, hear, taste, and remember in the past, our seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, feeling, we either think, yes, I like that, or no, I don't want that. And this acceptance and rejection, well, just like for instance, let's give an example of that. I walk past an ice cream shop and I think, yep, I like it. And then you look at the prices, and this is where the intelligence comes in, and think, I really can't afford it. It's too expensive. I have to choose between an ice cream and a pack of cigarettes. I think I'll go for the pack of cigarettes. So here we find the mind and the intelligence working on the basis of sense gratification, on the misconception that is the whole cause of our material existence. The conception that we can be happy by sense gratification. Sense gratification means we think we will be happy by eating ice cream, or rubbing our body against another body, or seeing something which is pleasing to us, or hearing something which is pleasing to us. So it is on the basis of this misconception that every living being in this world does everything. Every living being in this world, whatever they do for the sake of acquiring or getting happiness, getting pleasure, and avoiding distress. Even the plant will grow toward the light. Yes, the plant is alive, that means the soul is also present in the plant. So this idea that I shall be happy by enjoying sense gratification, this is the cause of our reincarnation. Because we have many, many, many desires. As I was saying, consciousness is the symptom of the living being. Consciousness distinguishes spirit from matter, the living from the non-living. So the symptom of the soul is consciousness, and the symptom of consciousness is desire. And in the material world, our desires are centered on enjoying the senses of the body. But we are not the body. We are eternal spiritual beings. The body is temporary. We are not the body. And therefore we are in an incongruous situation. We are trying to enjoy what we are not. We are trying to enjoy matter, but we are not matter. Another difference between spiritual and material is that spiritual is eternal, material is always changing and is therefore temporary. But in an illusion, a state of illusion, we think that we shall enjoy matter. And this takes many forms, just like an easy example, to enjoy ice cream. More complex is the conception that I shall represent France in the Olympic Games and I will bring glory to my country. So this is not this illusion that I will represent my country and bring honor to my country. This is not, you may say, well, that's not an interaction of the senses with the sense objects. That is mental sense gratification. How long am I supposed to speak, by the way? As long as people don't start walking out in masses. Well, we don't. Till 8:30. Okay. Till 9 o'clock. Well, French people are supposed to be philosophical. Let's see if you can stomach this. If it appeals to your sense enough that you can stay and listen to it. Yeah, but all right. Okay, let's go on. Yeah. But actually, all the French philosophers, they don't know anything about this. They don't know anything about all this. So they're implying their intelligence in the wrong way, to the wrong questions. So yeah, and then again we come. Utkramantang sitang vapi punjanam vagunam vitam vimurananu pashanti. People who do not see how we are giving up one body and accepting another, they are, according to Bhagavad Gita, greatly foolish. Which means that the whole materialistic civilization is grossly foolish. It's not only McDonald's that's grossly foolish and Mickey Mouse that's grossly foolish, but also your Rousseau, how do you pronounce that? Jacques Rousseau
Jean-Jacques Rousseau
and Khmer, he was from Algeria. Camus, I don't know how to pronounce, sorry. All your great philosophers, they're also greatly foolish. Sorry, I didn't come here to insult the French, but it's not only the French people are foolish, everyone is foolish. If we don't see the difference between the eternal and the living, that is me, and matter, then whatever our lucubrations, you have that word in French? It's all simply foolishness. And who can see this, who can understand this? Pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. One can understand if he has the eyes of knowledge. So that's true in every sphere of knowledge, in every discipline. Someone may say, well, prove reincarnation. Show me. What should we do? Cut your throat and then see? Well, I opened this little predication, preaching, by saying that, talking about Dr. Ian Stevenson, who had presented evidence that in any other sphere would be considered scientific evidence for reincarnation. But that's not actually required. One has to, if one is trained in the discipline of understanding this, then one can understand. So someone may say, well, prove that reincarnation takes place. Otherwise, I won't believe in it. So I may say to you, well, prove that subatomic particles exist. Or I may say, prove that quasars exist. Come on, show me a subatomic particle. Why should I believe it unless I can see it? So I may say, well, we can prove it, but you have to study the science. And you'll never actually see it with your naked eye or even with a microscope. But we can understand its existence due to the phenomena associated with it and the theory associated with it and the mathematics associated with it. So you can't actually show me subatomic particles?
No, you cannot.
Then why should I believe in it? Now you have to take the training, then you can understand. So it's the same with reincarnation. Pashanti jnana chakshusha. One who is trained in the knowledge, who sees with the eyes of knowledge, they can understand. Subatomic particle, what do? They pass some charge through a certain gas. Yeah, and then they say this is the proof. Now, if you take me, or probably you, or anyone, do we have any atomic physicists here by any chance? They don't usually come to meetings about reincarnation. No, we don't have any atomic physicists here, not even one. Okay. They're not very common. You're not safe anywhere. They've got you wherever you are. They're beaming lasers at you from space. So, if you get a few atomic physicists together and you make this little experiment, which probably most of them never did themselves, and you show them and they'll say, oh yeah, that proves subatomic particles. Yeah, okay, proved. Finished. But if we take any one of us and show the same experiment and say, I didn't see any subatomic particles. No, to appreciate the proof, you have to be trained. And even to, for everyone else, they simply say, yeah, well, subatomic, everyone knows they exist, it's proved. But you don't know, you accept on faith what the scientists say. And it's not only subatomic particles, it's pretty much everything that we call knowledge, we accept on faith. Anyone here been to China? You've been to China. Anyone here been to, let's think of a more obscure country. Soi Putta Osot in Bangkok. No, it's a soi. It's a street. If it's still there, I haven't been there for over 20 years. It's probably still there. Okay, there is near to the main post office in Bangkok, Krung Thep, there is a little street called Soi Putta Osot. There's no particular reason for you to disbelieve me. I lived there for about 2 years. But then it's belief. You don't know for sure. So that's just an example. Many, many things we don't have direct experience of, but we accept because others tell us. And theoretically, you could accept that subatomic particles exist, but you'd have to go through all the training to understand how and why they exist. Now, if you were to, and anyone who takes up that training, they start off with initial faith. Why would anyone take up the many years of study required, unless you're some genius, to understand the proof of the existence of subatomic particles if you didn't believe that they existed in the first place? So, jnana chakshusha, one sees with the eye of knowledge. That means that one has to be trained to see. In the experiment which shows the existence of subatomic particles, you can see, I can see, and the trained physicist also sees the same thing. Physically, we see the same thing. Well, that's also a matter of belief, because I don't know what you're seeing. But one who has I just might see some light in a gas chamber, but someone who's trained with the eyes of knowledge says, yes, that proves it. That's the proof. So there is a seeing with knowledge and without knowledge. There's a great difference, isn't there? It's both the knowledgeable and the ignorant see the same thing, but the understanding of the savant is different from that of the idiot. Or not just unknowledgeable person, ignorant. Yeah. So the Bhagavad Gita is the knowledge by which we can understand everything. That's what I started off by saying. Vedas are the knowledge by which we can understand the principles of everything. So that when you touch, taste, smell, feel, and hear, as we all do at every moment, we won't see simply superficially, but we will understand all the principles behind it. But one has to be trained to understand this. And that training begins with faith. That is reasonable faith, not some blind dogmatic faith. So faith, and then there has to be training so that we can understand. As I said about Bhagavad Gita, it's not a book of dogma, it's a book of transmission of knowledge. And the student, Arjuna, he raises questions, he misunderstands. Krishna explains to him from various perspectives this knowledge. So to get that knowledge, there are some preconditions. This knowledge, it's not exactly, it's not the same as knowledge of biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics. There's some significant difference, because we're talking about understanding the soul, the characteristic of which is consciousness. But we have to apply our consciousness, our mind and intelligence to understand that. And the reason that we don't understand is because our consciousness is polluted by material desires, which covers our clear understanding. So we're like caught in a trap. We have to understand that we are spiritual beings, pure beings, beyond. We're not actually related with matter, but almost like magnets, our attention, our consciousness is attracted to the objects of the senses. Just like the ice cream shop. immediately salivation. Pavlov's dogs. They don't eat ice cream. We're just the same as dogs. Ding, 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 ding. So how do we break out of that cycle? How do we get that jnana chakshush? Well, that requires some mercy, which comes down. And we have to reach up to get that mercy. It is somewhat comparable, but not fully comparable, to the teacher in the academy who is on a higher level of knowledge and tries to impart that knowledge to the students. Now, to acquire this knowledge, to understand this knowledge, requires purification of consciousness. As long as one is cultivating material desire, one cannot clearly understand this process of reincarnation. Or, even if one understands it, that there is reincarnation, one will misunderstand the ultimate mechanism behind it. Actually, the mechanism is not that difficult to understand, theoretically. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So that operates on the karmic platform also. I cut a chicken's throat in this life, and next life, I'm running around squawking as a chicken, and someone comes and cuts my throat. Maybe not next life, but some lifetime later. I feed hungry people in this life, and in a future life, the next life, I won't go hungry myself. So there are people who understand these principles, that this works, the law of karma works on the cosmic platform. But they think, oh, okay, good, all right, so let me be good in this life, and in the next life, I'll be able to enjoy more. So if I'm good, I get a good result. So simply to understand that there is reincarnation is not enough. One has to understand the ultimate purpose of life. Now, Bhagavad Gita also teaches us, and we can practically observe, that this material world is full of misery. For instance, just to give an example which we can all understand, that many people from all over the world come to Paris, especially in summer, and they think, by going to Paris, I will be more happy than if I stay at home. But they don't become more happy by going to Paris. There's just the idea, let me go and see the Eiffel Tower. So they go to the Eiffel Tower and they take a photo, smile in the photo, but they're not really happy. And all the effort that they go to have that photo taken in front of the Eiffel Tower is not really worth it for the minimal amount of useless pleasure that they get from doing so. And even if we think we're happy, we have to suffer in this world. As Krishna points out in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Before Krishna said, he spoke about jnana chakshusha, and he explains what is jnana, what is knowledge. Seeing with the eyes of knowledge, what is knowledge? So he may think, well, it's something very mystic and esoteric. This is knowledge, Krishna says, to see that everyone in this world has to suffer birth, death, old age, and disease. This is knowledge. Everyone knows we have to suffer birth, death, old age, and disease. But pashan api na pashyati. We see, but we don't see. We prefer not to see. My father has gone away, means he's died. My mother has gone away, means she's died also. My brother has died, means you're also going to die. But we prefer not to think about that. What happens after death? Well, I guess I'll R.I.P. Rest in peace. But we don't know. We don't think about it. That's why vimuharnanu pashanti. People who don't know this, they're foolish. They're thinking about the wrong thing. So much discussion, I think in France more than any other country, about, still today, it's like central to French culture, how to make a fair society. They thought they had it all worked out at the time of the French Revolution, but they've been working it out ever since, and they still didn't work it out. So that's not unimportant, but it's not the most, it's by no means the most important subject or query. The really important thing is that who are we, what are we doing here, and why are we suffering in this world? So, purification of consciousness is required. If there's not purification of consciousness, then we spend our whole life chasing after the wrong thing. Like a dog chasing its tail. Have you seen a dog chasing its tail? Sometimes a dog, it goes as if it's trying to catch its tail, but it can never catch it. Unless maybe they have these mutated dogs, which, anyway, let's not get too far out here. By breeding, they can make a dog that can catch its tail, but and by genetic manipulation. But anyway, So, some people, they foolishly waste their life trying to make the perfect hamburger that lasts for... Stick it on the plate, come back 1 year later, and it's still supposedly fresh. Some people come to Paris, they're saying, oh, Paris is famous for beautiful women, let me go and find one. Some are training hard so that they can make it to the French soccer team. So these are gross forms of wasting our life. And others who are dealing with various philosophical questions, but not considering our basic existential position, they're also wasting their life, but just in a more refined way, because it's all based on karma, on material desire. This whole idea, liberté, égalité, fraternité, what does that mean? That we'll all live peacefully and enjoy ourselves. Let us all live peacefully and happily and enjoy our senses. It's all, such a proposition is all foolishness or madness, because we have to die, we have to suffer in this world. So, the root cause of all our problems, said Buddha, is desire. The root of all suffering is desire. However, Buddha did not complete the sentence, because he only taught one side of the Vedic knowledge, which is the negative side. The root cause of all happiness is also desire. There's no actual happiness in pursuing material desire. But spiritual desire, that is because the nature of consciousness is desire, then spiritual consciousness, that gives rise to full happiness, which we're always seeking. So spiritual training by which we can see the methodology or the mechanism of reincarnation means it's anartha nivritti, to overcome material desire, and artha pravritti, to enter into or cultivate our spiritual desire. So I'm just giving some idea of this. It is a great discipline. The basics of it are actually not very difficult to understand. There are many details also. But to actually understand it requires a spiritual commitment. If we understand that we are incarcerated in various material bodies, one after another, then we should be very anxious to get out of this horrible situation. Before I was in this body, I was in the body of a dog and a cat and a giraffe and a chimpanzee and a bug and a demigod and a plant. So many bodies. Why we get different kinds of bodies? Because of our karmic reactions and because of our desire. And it's all under the control of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his representatives, the demigods. Karmana daiva netrener jantur deho papataye. We get different bodies according to our actions, our karma, under the supervision of higher authorities. Then we get the different bodies. Shocham, chakshu, sparshnam, cha, rasanam, granam, even. Questions? I should finish now?
Questions and answers.
Okay, well, all right. There's supposed to be a session tomorrow, so I can talk more about this tomorrow. The conclusion is get out of this cycle of birth and death. That's the conclusion. Otherwise there is no conclusion. It's punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Again and again getting born and again dying. You conclude one life and you start another. But it's all in ignorance. It's all suffering. So get out of it. That's the conclusion. No, you don't have to get out of the room here. You can stay. So that should be part 2. How to get out. So part 2 is tomorrow. Of course, no guarantee that we're all going to be alive in the same body tomorrow, but if I'm still in this same body and it's not been smashed up or by some accident or not smashed down by some disease, then I plan to come here tomorrow. See, you can't translate that. Smashed up, smashed down. It won't translate. Yeah, has its own idioms. No, but smashed up, smashed down. No. So, and you're all welcome to come tomorrow. We hope you survive in the present body for another 22 and a half hours and are able to make it at least to the start of the program tomorrow.
This lady has a question she'd like to ask now because she's not assured to be able to come tomorrow, as you mentioned. But having studied Buddhism, she says that in Buddhism it's explained that not to reincarnate again, actually you have to cry so much that you could feel the 4 oceans. So is it sufficient to cry, or is there some other way than just crying not to reincarnate again?
Yeah, did everyone hear the question? Do you want to say it again in the mic in French? Yeah, so I'll say it again for the... So according to Buddhism, to get liberation, then moksha or nirvana, one has to cry and cry sufficiently to fulfill the four oceans. Is that sufficient? Well, everyone's crying. When one sees that I'm crying and crying, that should be an impetus to find out the means by which we can stop crying. So to understand that we are suffering in this material world is a prerequisite for trying to stop that suffering. But it does not in and of itself constitute liberation. I have to explain more about that tomorrow. That even we may understand, okay, this material world is suffering, but because we have a long-standing tendency to try to enjoy it, we still try to enjoy it, and then we don't get liberated. That's why in the monastic life in Buddhism there is strict austerity, with the idea to withdraw ourselves from the possibility of indulging in desires. There are many Buddhists people who consider themselves Buddhists in the West nowadays, but hardly any one of them even considers following these strict austerities that those who are very serious about Buddhism strictly practice. Fortunately, that's not necessary. As I said, that the Buddha said that desire is the cause of all suffering. And there's this idea in Buddhism that you have to stop desire. But desire is the symptom of consciousness. Consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So we can't really stop desire. Even if you want to stop desire, well, that's a desire to want to stop desire. So you're caught in a paradox. And then we have try to make more paradoxes, like the sound of one hand clapping. But it doesn't really get you out of the paradox. So, pashanti jnana chakshusha, one who has knowledge, so simply liberation from suffering, that is not the ultimate goal. One has to enter into the blissful life of the soul. So, if you do happen to be still in the same body in 22 hours and 20 minutes from now, then please come here tomorrow and there'll be more discussion on these points. If you're serious about this, and if you think that there's some gain to hearing more about this. But really, we should be serious about this. To suffer in this material world is a very bad condition. Everything we do at every moment is for the sake of enjoying and to thwart suffering. But still we suffer, and ultimately we have to suffer death and rebirth, then another life of struggling, and then again death. And when we're young, we think, life is very nice. Gradually the body rots and then dies. It's a very terrible situation. We should come out of this. We should be intelligent enough to do whatever is required to come out of this. Labdva sudurlabhamidang bahusambhavante manusham jan Manusham anityam apihadhira. Manusham artadam anityam apihadhira. Turnam yateta napated anumritya yavan nishrayasaya vishaya kalu sarvatasyat. This one verse gives the best advice to every human being. That this human form of life is very rare. But now we have it. After many births we get it. It is very valuable because only in the human form of life do we have sufficient intelligence to understand our predicament. But it is temporary, doesn't last very long. Therefore, we should become sober and steady in our intelligence. Not like this insane civilization where everyone is trying to get more money to buy more things to give them more illusion. So we should be contemplative enough to consider that anyway I have to die. But before I die this time, I should do whatever is required so that I don't have to get born again in this material world. This is our ultimate benefit. And if we think, well, there are so many other things to do. I can go watch a movie, I can go drink some wine, I can go visit a prostitute. Then Krishna tells us, that's available in every other species of life. We've already done all these things millions of times in millions of lives. Millions, billions, trillions, quadrillions, zillions. Just a minute. I didn't finish. So sense gratification is available in every species of life. But to get out of this vicious cycle of birth and death is only possible in the human form of life. What is the ultimate goal of life? That I've just been speaking. To get free from suffering and to be happy. Fully and eternally. Wait a minute, you have to translate that. Now your next question is how to enjoy the struggle. Wrong question. Did you hear what was stated? Were you here for the lecture? This struggle is not enjoyable. If you want how to enjoy this struggle, that you already know. You don't, or if you want more advice, don't ask me. I'm here to inform you that the endeavor to enjoy this struggle is foolishness. If you don't want to accept that, then that's up to you. You can go and ask. So many people are giving their ideas how you can enjoy this struggle. If you think that there's any enjoyment in repeated birth and death, well, that's up to you. There is some pleasure there, otherwise people would not pursue it. But we're only attracted to this material pleasure because we have no information of or immediate experience of actual spiritual pleasure. In the desert, in the summer, 60 degrees Celsius, someone is burning and dying from want of water. And someone comes, parachutes in and says, I brought you some water. And he says, open your mouth. And he brings one dropper and he has one drop of water to give. So he said, only one drop of water. Only one drop of water. Yes, only one drop. And there's potassium cyanide mixed in it also. So in the absence of profuse, what's the word? Plenty of water. Yeah, profusion. In the absence of sufficient water, that little drop of water may give some pleasure before he dies of the effect of cyanide. But actually we need profuse water, plenty of water without cyanide. So in this material world there is some pleasure, but it is far insufficient to fulfill our need. And it's also mixed with the suffering of birth, death, old age and disease. So to think, let me enjoy this situation is not a very good proposition. But if you want, you can. As Krishna tells Arjuna after explaining him the Bhagavad Gita, you decide. It's up to you. You do as you like. So we can speak these things. It's up to you to accept or not. But we have to inform you that by accepting this knowledge, you will be greatly benefited. And by refusing to accept it, then you will be forced to suffer the conditions of material existence, which are not at all favorable. Well, thank you all for your patience, and those of you who have sat through all of this. In the modern age, which is just the sense gratification is ramped up to extraordinarily stupid levels, it's unusual to find people who actually can sit and listen to some philosophy for almost 2 hours, especially when it's translated.